Greetings, this is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. My talk today focuses on something that I learned in business school that's called the 50% rule and how this affects Tesla and its relationship to Ford and other primarily ICE manufacturers. Bonjour, wie geht's, wie steht's noch immer aus Beinen, Zdravstvuyte, ni hao ma. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. There's a viewer of mine that asked a really great question a few days ago, which was, what did I think was going to happen to Ford? And I've been doing sort of research and comparing notes with really smart folks that I knew in industry on sort of what does the future look like when it comes to electric or AEVs, and also what are the futures of some of the major ICE manufacturers like Ford looks like. As we all know, Tesla stock price has tripled over the last, let's say, 3 years, while Ford stock price has almost been cut in half. And one of the big drivers for this has been the lack of an efficient response to what's going on with ICE engines. With ICE engines versus electrics. So the reason why I came up with something in business school called the 50-50 rule is that from a business buyer standpoint, if one supplier represents, or one customer represents more than 50% of your buyers, you're not your own company, you're owned by that customer, and if that customer changes direction, you potentially are put out of business. Now, when we look at cars and this electric revolution, one of the nightmares that's going on right now is the fact that there's a lot of research and development and manufacturing capacity that has to be built to produce the batteries that go into the battery packs. Most of the ICE manufacturers, except for, from what I've seen, Mercedes, have made an effort to simply buy their batteries mostly from Asia and mostly from Korea, based on their production of lithium-ion batteries that can be ported over to cars from the laptops and cell phones. This is a good idea, especially if you're in test quantities of 30 to 50,000 vehicles. But now that Tesla has forced the game into this is going to be where the future is going, both for trucks and cars, it sort of totally changed the conversation. And one of the mysteries that I've been sort of wrestling with a number of executives on is, if your battery pack is 50% of the cost of the vehicle, and then you add, let's say, control methods or software or whatever to that, there's this huge issue that pops up, which is if 10, let's say, car manufacturers have to get their batteries from 3 companies, those 3 companies now control the game, because all those big manufacturers can't produce their own batteries, and therefore they're stuck with whatever the pricing or delivery schedule is of the manufacturer of those batteries. So it's my belief then that the real power in the auto industry shifts to the battery manufacturers. And by Tesla having exclusive relationships with Panasonic, it really results in, for example, Tesla being able to make a decent profit without necessarily making cars, because they can simply make profit on their batteries. So they have the profit built in on the batteries, and then they build a car and have a profit on the car as well, or a truck, for example. So the nightmare that I see coming is a situation where you have a Ford or a GM, their entire product line has now gone electric, and they don't make their own batteries. So for over 50% of their costs, which is the battery component of their vehicles, they're reliant on the same company that their competitors are. So now they have the issue of, okay, we need to distinguish ourselves by our marketing, our dealer network, our design, all these other elements. And the answer to how that's been working out is they lose money on every car. And as I've covered previously, an example of this is the CEO of Chrysler recently announced that they're losing $13,000 on every electric vehicle that they sell. So what this means is as you bring electric to each level, it's a total nightmare for the ICE manufacturers in their ability to potentially make any money as they produce electric vehicles, especially if they haven't reverse integrated into producing their own batteries. So the answer as to my vision on where it goes forward is reflected in the stock price. I think they're in deep trouble right now, and that they need to go ahead, both GM and Ford, and use cash to create their own battery facilities so that as the industry moves towards electric, they'll be able to be competitive, not only because they can take somebody else's batteries and deliver a product, but because they've got their own battery source, so that the batteries can become a profit center controlled by them rather than controlled by another organization. I believe where the future looks like right now is that, you know, if the batteries are such a large component of the deal, you could even have battery manufacturers deciding, shoot, we'll just go get a designer and drop a car on the streets because we control the batteries of this. So you could have new vehicle manufacturers attached to battery manufacturers simply because the battery guys know they control the entire game. So, so all this said, I believe that there are a number of auto companies around the world, especially in the US between Ford and GM, that are in sort of deep trouble but don't realize it yet. And they very much could be headed for bankruptcy because of their lack of an efficient response to the shift both in cars and trucks to electric for a number of reasons. I'm really surprised because talk about a well-heeled companies where they have huge amounts of money and access to consultants and all kinds of information flow. It's amazing that organizations at that level could be, you know, surprised by anything and not use their resources to aggressively respond to any threat that's on the horizon. The challenge that's showing up in electric is that the threat response is not as easy as it is, let's say, to a new tire or, you know, other component. It's a multi-year effort to address the competitive disadvantage that they currently have. In specific, I was asked about what do I think will happen at Ford. I'm hopeful because there are millions of people whose jobs rely on that company being successful. I'm hopeful at some point that the fact that they fired the CEO is a sign to the current new CEO that the board is serious about trying to identify and address issues that make them a non-competitive entity. And so as these issues are addressed, I think we'll see, if you will, some new what's going on. But the same old that we've seen thus far, I think, results in these companies possibly going bankrupt and taking a large block of U.S. jobs with them. So, long-winded statement to say, you know, my sense of Ford/GM is in a world 5 years from now with Tesla being a dominant player, and then Mercedes doing a great job in trucks and cars as they've been doing in this space. And then possibly, you know, one or two of the Korean companies who have tight relationships with these Korean battery manufacturers will likely benefit from that exposure as well. So I just think that we're in a situation where the landscape will really change in terms of who is in the power position, with Tesla being one of the future leaders. And I feel like the major U.S. manufacturers are grossly unprepared. I have to admit, the devil's advocate other side of this, I do have one of my smartest MIT PhD buddies who's arguing that the battery is simply the equivalent of the anti-lock brakes. Everybody has anti-lock brakes. It's no big deal. You just buy the brakes, stick them on the car, and they're just another component. So his contention is that the whole battery zone is irrelevant And I totally disagree with this because number one, there's a shortage of battery supply. So if you can get supply, that could be an advantage. There is no shortage of anti-lock brakes. So hence, you know, that piece of the argument really doesn't fly. So I think it's easy to throw out the Bob Lutz analysis that says everything is fine. You can just buy battery technology and compete with Tesla. It's not a big deal. I think those people are crazy, especially when you look at the difference between the 18650 in terms of how it's optimized for performance and the 2170 that's optimized for being able to deliver on weight and price so that they can approach different markets. So even in that split, you can see that there's differences that affect, you know, how those entities will be used by customers in the future, and therefore completely different strategies on how implementation might occur. Look forward to your input and take on this. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks for the time. Please like and subscribe. Tschüss, macht's gut, au revoir, la hit road, and have a great day.